All right, and we are live. The
Woo!
Hamadi Hump Day,
We
episode
are
22. No, I don't know what episode we're on.
5 million. Hey,
5 million.
let me share the post over to my socials here.
There you go.
It's crazy. My system dual boots, so right now I'm on the Linux side, and I have
Oh,
to relog into everything. It's just like
weird.
so annoying. Uh,
I'm glad you did
let's
that
see.
because I got to turn on my do not disturb here. My my phone just started ringing in the middle of the podcast. Oh, excuse me. I have to take this call. It's a
That
client.
takes. Pardon me.
No,
Stall the audience for a few moments, if you don't
that
mind.
reminds me of that. You remember that Rudy Giuliani thing when he was running for president years ago, and he's giving some speech, and his phone rings. And he's like, "Oh, pardon me, it's my wife. Oh, hey. Oh, I'm actually giving a speech in front of hundreds of people, and oh, that's great. Oh, well, I'm sure they'd love to see you too." It seems
I
like that.
think I missed
It seems like
out.
that. It seems like that judge is going to dismiss his bankruptcy uh, filing. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad
What?
for him.
Which one?
Julie, he filed for bankruptcy. Had that because he had repeatedly accused those women of stealing votes or whatever or putting in fake votes for Trump or Biden or whatever.
Oh,
And
part of the Stop the Steal thing?
right, and they
Okay.
sued him. The ladies sued him for slander or libel, whatever it
Defamation or
is.
something.
Yeah, defamation, and won $130 million judgment. And he's claiming he's broke and can't pay it, and so he's wanting to declare bankruptcy.
I always wondered about those kind of massive payouts where there's no chance of the person paying it. You know, Marissa and I were watching that HBO documentary McMillions. Have you seen that one?
No, but it's on my to-do list.
It is so great. But it's about the
It's
McDonald's
a scam
monopoly
about the
piece of shit.
monopoly, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I don't want to spoil it. You should watch it. It's pretty
Okay.
amazing. But some of the obviously, since you can tell from the very first episode, they're talking with some of the FBI agents that were involved, that there were some convictions that took place, right? So we don't know like who and for what, but so some
Was it
of
all? It's all sealed. It's not a matter of record.
no. Like as the documentary series unfolds, you find out
I
more of
see. I
these
see. Okay.
cases. So I don't want to spoil it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Don't. Yeah.
it's not a spoiler to say that there were some convictions. Okay.
Okay.
But some of them they're like you're required to pay restitution, right? And the restitution might be something like $25 million. And they're like, I don't have $25 million. I have nothing close to $25 million. And so they set up something with the court, and so it's like their wages are garnished for $400 a month.
For life.
Forever. Yeah, for life. And then it's like, I'm assuming that when you die, the estate of the people that you ripped off can sue your estate for the remaining amount, and then it gets tied up in probate. But it's just like, this is kind of a meaningless like what how is that? Like if someone sued me and like, okay, we're entering a judgment of $10 million, like,
Okay.
yeah,
Well,
great. Like, how are you gonna get that?
I think in this particular case, like, and the ladies had said this repeatedly, that really all they wanted was an apology of him to go on the record and say, I made that up. I lied. I didn't have, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
And I mean,
Emotions were hot, but I made a mistake and I'm
yeah,
so sorry.
I mean, anything. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't have any evidence to support, because he didn't, or he would have presented it in court. I mean, like that, he literally had no evidence, just literally made it up. And I think the other thing about it is that so he refused to do that, and then even afterwards, after the judgment, was continuing to be like, well, I mean, I don't know, but I mean, they did it. I mean, it was, I mean, crazy. And then
I remember this. They had them on camera moving ballots around. So there was one video that had come out where some ladies they were feeding stuff through the ballot machine, and they pulled out from underneath the table a suitcase full of
right.
ballots. And they just started feeding the suitcase full of ballots into the machine, and it's like, it looks kind of weird. And so I think that kind of fed into this narrative of like, those aren't legit, and
Right.
there's no paper trail. We can't find any record of these things. But it's like, so that may be like evidence that something is up, but maybe it was inadmissible or something like that. Or because I remember seeing those videos. Those are very entertaining, you know.
Who knows who knows the modern methods of stealing an election are so varied. It's hard to keep track of them all.
Well, I don't know that it was stolen. Like, that's something that I'm, you know, I think that there's a lot of really strange oddities about the 2020 election, but to say that it was stolen, I mean, I don't know.
The thing about
That's pretty dramatic.
The thing about this situation, I think other situations, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this. This is a great topic of conversation, but it seems to me that like, and what they were saying in court on the lady's behalf, like the reason the judgment was so big was because, I mean, there's some pretty fired up people, let's say, on that side of the table, and
oh sure.
And so these ladies had death threats. They had been stalked. They had people showed up at work and like throwing things at them. It was just craziness. And so their lives were basically ruined, from his, assertions. And so that was one. It was like, dude, like you gotta give massive judgment as
there is.
deterrence.
I think this is one of the really strange things about our political situation right now is that we have like violent factions within both the right and the left, right? So you got the guy showing up to the pizza parlor that was part of the
child
QAnon stuff. Ring. Yeah. He comes in with the AR and he's like, we got to free the kids.
Free the kids.
Like, whoa.
They're in the basement. There's no basement.
And then you've got like on the left wing side, you've got people that will show up to events, completely black, what is it called? Black bloc, where you're covered head to toe. You look like it's like you can just see your eyes. Yeah. And like with like bike chains, and they're like beating on people and smashing stuff. Like folks have gone to the hospital for this. And it's like, wow, like we're kind of in a moment where people are like, yeah, violence sometimes necessary for achieve your political ends, especially if the other side is as evil as the other side is.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
I mean, what other recourse is there? Where the only thing is that requires what is it? The only thing evil requires is for good people to do nothing.
Right. That's right.
There you go. And it's like I can listen to both sides of this and be like, the other guys are saying the same thing about you, and they're like, no, but there's no moral equivalence. Like our political violence is necessary.
Yeah, totally, dude. I mean, like our republic is at stake.
The blood of patriots has to water the tree of liberty. It's like, oh,
isn't that Jefferson said that the tree of liberty must be watered from time to time with the blood of patriots? I'm like, damn, this guy was hardcore.
Was that? Do you know if that was before or after the French Revolution that he said that?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because he was a big Francophile.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if it's after,
as was Franklin.
If it's after that, then I think that quote is much more extreme, and sometimes you got to just chop people's heads off. If it's before, then maybe it's like big talk from someone who just won a revolution, and independence from their master state. Can you find it?
Actually, I'm looking up right here to see when they said this.
I bet it's after.
Yeah, I don't. All the Google searches are these right wing groups saying it's time to rise up. It's pretty crazy. You search for these things. It's like, I don't know if I wanted to find that.
Blood of Patriots state. Let's see. See if DuckDuckGo.
Oh, that's the problem. I'm using Google. No, that's a big mistake. Oops.
Okay, True Liberty. Okay. Jefferson wrote to William Stephen Smith on November 13, 1787 about Shays' rebellion in Massachusetts. Wow. So Shays' rebellion was this is just a little quick thing from the history.com. Series of violent attacks on courthouses and other government properties in Massachusetts began in 1786, led to a full-blown military confrontation in 1787. So this is before the Constitution is ratified. So this is still
right.
Articles of Confederation.
Articles. Yep. Yep.
The rebels were mostly ex-Revolutionary War soldiers turned farmers who opposed state economic policies causing poverty and property foreclosures. The rebellion was named after Daniel Shays, farmer and former soldier who fought at Bunker Hill, was one of several leaders of the insurrection. So Jefferson is writing about this. He's like, sometimes you gotta break some eggs. But this is before the French Revolution. I think the French Revolution
only a year before
minds about some stuff.
Yeah. Well, for sure it did, because in fact, I was what was I reading the other day? Oh, I got sucked into A Tale of Two Cities.
Oh wow! Okay.
Again, and it's so interesting reading it, and then like kind of reading about it, because I think before that, like the American Revolution, they say like is actually better. Instead of a revolution, it's actually better seen as a civil war, because at that time, obviously, this was we were all Britain, and you had a good number of people in the American colonies who were not a fan of secession.
Yeah, they're loyalists.
And not because they loved the king, but because, the system was working for them. Right. And like, the merchants and landowners and different people.
Well, it would be like if California seceded tomorrow,
mm-hmm.
right? Like, there's going to be tons of people in California be like, no, we want to stay with the U.S., And
right.
So it'd be like a civil war inside California.
Right. And so in that context, the way in which Britain dealt with us, and kind of like, it was not an overly brutal. You hear all these tales of, Washington troops suffering Valley Forge, all this other kind of stuff. But in most part, it was
wasn't the opposing army.
Right. That's just the hardship of nature, and really the lack of preparedness and resources that we had on our side at the time. But if it was a pretty civil war, if you will, wasn't kind of any wanton, like, destruction or whatever.
Gentlemen.
And when the French Revolution happened, I just, some of the things I was reading around the Tale of Two Cities rabbit hole I went down a few days ago. How long was the terror? It was like 10 years, I want to say, something like that. That initially, like, everybody in England and certainly America was all like, yeah, viva la people, and until they started beheading people and all this different, and then you had all of these, what we would now refer to as like, the Stasi in East Germany, or the Soviet informants and stuff, like people just terrified to even speak negatively about anything, or they'd get hauled up in front of a tribunal and massacred. And it was like, dude, this is way out of hand, Yeah. So that's it's interesting to me
French politics for you. It's a mess. It's always been a mess. It's a mess now. It's going to be a mess forever.
Yeah, there's a joke about some guy going to the library and asking to see a copy of the French Revolution, the French Constitution, and the librarian saying, "Oh, sorry, we don't stock periodicals here."
Yeah,
yeah, but it's interesting to me that I was just reading about World War I a few months ago, and the clear demarcation of the time, like before World War I, the way the world was, not just America, but Europe specifically, like all of these rulers were all like cousins and intermarrying with each other, very Game of Thrones-ish type of situation.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, that's my cousin married to this czar, and whatever the case may be, and very, like somebody got slapped across the face with a glove, and this means war, and their troops march gallantly to battle for the, defense of your nation and everything. And it really, like after World War I, it was like, dude, and the context in which, like, some of these, like I think Prussian troops or whatever, just getting rolled over. Their horse and cavalry get rolled over by primitive tanks and stuff at that time, and just the advance of technology that people just were not prepared for. And certain people are just more ruthless than others in terms of like, hey, I mean, I'm going to do what I have to do, and it being so outside the realm of accepted behavior, and people just being, how do I deal with this?
Well, warfare. So you have to think about what warfare was like during the Middle Ages. So one of the really amazing thing about the Middle Ages is that they had developed this concept of limited warfare. So this duke and this duke are upset at each other. So yeah, like you're saying, like someone gets slapped across the face. It's like, okay, that's it. And so they'll go march into battle against each other. But it's their professional armies. They're kept in garrisons, and they are paid for by, the duke's coffers. And it's like, hey, if the guy runs out of money, he's not going to be able to pay his soldiers. The war's over. They'll usually have a couple, 2 or 3 decisive battles. So, like, go look in English history about the Battle of Crécy, for example, or when William the Conqueror comes and takes stuff out, or like the stuff having to do with the French, the border with Switzerland, I think.
Right? Alsace-Lorraine or whatever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have like a couple, like I said, decisive battles, maybe a siege of an important city, and then this strip of land, gets handed over to the other side because they won, and the professional armies go back. Right. And other than the people in that city and that are besieged, and even then, that's not that common. Life goes on. Right. This is kind of the sport of kings. Right. You have hunting, you have various games that involve a ball, and you have limited warfare. And this really changes. Changes, I think, forever with the Civil War. Let me see. Let's see if I can fix my microphone here. It's this one. This is what the microphone on my camera sounds like. That's better?
Oh, no.
Figured. Hold on.
It sounds the same to me. That's why it sounded like.
Is this better?
Boom. There's your studio mic.
Okay. That was weird.
Yeah, now you're like super loud.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I'll turn down. That's my fault. I had my volume cranked up.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. But you're saying the Civil War.
Yeah. So Civil War changes things with this, mainly with Sherman. And you had people, remember, Civil War is only about 50 or so years before World War I happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have like a big war in Europe in between those two times. And this idea of like, we're going to take down, we're going to burn cities. The Napoleonic Wars change a lot of stuff, right? And so then by the time you get to World War I, and you have sort of devices of extermination. So like the machine gun,
mustard gas, and the chemical warfare too, and the airplane.
The machine gun is, I think, what really destroys the idea of gallantry, because so France gets into the war and they're like, we're going to win. I mean, who has ever withstood, the French cavalry charge or the infantry charge?
And I think at that time too, like, it's hard to conceptualize it now, but I mean, they were undisputed, like, largest army on earth, I think, at the time. And
and also like considered the bravest. Like they would have a charge go out, and
the French Legion,
bunch of soldiers with bayonets charging, shouting "Vive la France!" And like you just get butchered, by the French army. And so the first reports that are coming back of the machine gun just mowing down whole lines of French troops, and like they would shout,
scene in The Last Samurai.
Yeah. I mean, it was like that, "Vive la France!" chopped, done, and they're like, "Wow, gallantry's over." Like, okay, they fought bravely, they fought gallantly, and for nothing,
and died.
Died in the dirt, like squashed like bugs.
Or as Trump would say, like the dogs they are.
Like the frogs they are. No, sorry.
Yeah,
anyway,
my bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, warfare changes a lot at that point. And I think we're still living in kind of a world of total warfare where, it's like, hey, you go finish the job. You do whatever it takes to
Mhm.
secure victory. And it doesn't matter who, the rest of it we call euphemistically collateral damage, but it's like,
Right, right,
that's just price of victory,
right. Well,
It's
thankfully,
really
we've gotten a lot more, the technology's so good now with the smart bombs and everything else. It's like you can contain it more than you used to be able to, but
a little bit. I
a
mean,
little
yes,
bit.
okay, we're not firebombing like we did against Tokyo.
Or Dresden,
Yeah. Yeah, that's not happening anymore, but I mean, the number of civilian casualties is not. So,
Well,
how
and
many like in Iraq, I think in the Iraq war isn't it over 1 million civilian
right,
casualties?
right.
So it's like okay, we we have all this great technology, it's very targeted. Only a few civilians.
Well,
You know?
and it's to me that's always so asymmetrical the way we talk about it. Like with Iraq's a great example. You have so many thousand American servicemen killed, which is obviously tragic, and then you have 1 million Iraqi civilians that are killed, and it's like, geez, this is
Well,
it's just not it's just not discussed. I think the same thing's going on with Israel and Palestine right now too. You get like the number of Palestinians being killed versus the number of uh,
oh,
you
very
know
asymmetrical.
I
Very
mean,
asymmetrical.
so asymmetrical.
And the thing is even if someone's looked at it and said, well, okay, the Iraqis, how many of those were actually civilians? How many of them were insurgents? Whatever. It's like, I feel like if you're fighting against a foreign country that is on your soil,
I mean, benefit of the doubt kind of goes to the inhabitants there, right? I mean,
yeah, I
I
mean,
don't
I
know.
kind of want to give you a free pass, even if you're like, well, they're ultimately fighting for the wrong side, right? They're it's very unfortunate that they're on the side of whatever ISIS, whatever.
Right.
Like, sure, but that's their home, so um, I want to give them a pass on it. Like, I would hope if some invading army came in here and they were like actually morally superior to our own government, and and we were like, yeah, well, screw that, we're still fighting back.
Well, that's the way it would be. This is not the way we do it around here.
Yeah, it's like, well, is he a civilian or not? I mean, remember, he's fighting for the wrong team. It's like, I'm fighting for the home team. Like, I don't, I don't know
There's
what
a
you're talking
there's a
about.
great scene in Casablanca, the Humphrey Bogart movie, when the German general is talking to this is the height of German power. Like they've taken over France, they got the Vichy government in place, and this German is basically German generals asking Humphrey Bogart, can you imagine Germans in London, and Bogart's like, I mean, ask me when you get there and I'll let and then he says, well, can you imagine us in New York or Brooklyn or whatever it was? And he's like, there are certain areas of New York, General, that I wouldn't advise you to invade.
I wouldn't go in there.
And it's such a great line because it's like, oh yeah, man, I don't know, you want to mess with New Yorkers.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
well, we may have our petty squabbles, but
yeah,
we'll set that aside
yeah.
for
I mean, of
fight
course
this.
you could take over Paris, but good luck with New York. Yeah.
Certain parts I would not suggest going into.
Yeah,
That's funny.
that's so weird, man. This is uh interesting, this fallout over the
Talking about the French
the
election now.
no the well just I was looking at this headline that just flashed up. It's so interesting, the fallout of this Biden debate. I don't know if you've been paying attention to any of
Yeah,
this, but
I have a little bit. What have
uh
you been seeing?
what was interesting, like there was this huge surge of Biden's got to go after the debate, and then you had several events, and of course Biden himself like doesn't want to go anywhere.
Oh,
And
I just got one of his emails today explaining his situation.
mm,
Um,
was it persuasive?
it's what now?
Was it persuasive?
Well, so I get them pretty regularly. I get probably like 3 a day from the campaign, and then this one, yeah, I'd like to allow remote contents. President. Um, Yeah, so going into the debate, our campaign was clear-eyed about the 5 things we need to do to win this race. Number 1, show the strength of the president's record of accomplishment, leadership, and support. 2, going on the offense against Trump. 3, maintaining multiple pathways to 270 electoral votes with a focus on the blue wall states. 4, staying laser focused on our coalition of voters. And 5, driving a vision and ambitious agenda for the future. Those imperatives remain true. What has changed from the debate is the urgency and discipline with which we need to pursue them. We believe if we follow the roadmap below, we will win. And so then it's like, I mean, they've gone through like how we shore up the coalition, where our campaign is designed to like win the election, not just like poll well and so on, and then call at the end for donations. So I mean,
at least he remembered to ask for donations at the end. That's good.
Well, so
maybe
remember,
not fully,
this is not
maybe not
from
totally
him.
senile.
This is not from him. It's signed by his campaign manager, right? So this is specifically from the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make that clear, because it's not like, oh, he's being ghost written. It's like the campaign manager signed it.
Right.
But they feel very confident that that they're going to stay in, and that it's still winnable, and this hasn't changed anything. It's like, yeah, you see some fluttering in the polls, but like,
they're delusional.
Well, what I think is really strange, as I've been following some of the fallout from this thing, how like the weird rhetoric that people have been using. Like, I think it was like, was it Pelosi was saying this? Because at first she was like, "Hey, this is not a problem. Look, his opponent's a convicted felon, whatever." And then,
dude, nobody cares about that. It's so crazy.
I know, but anyway, but then now she's like, "Well, he needs to make a decision. It's like he has. He told everybody what his decision was. Like, I mean, I've been getting his decision 3 times a day. Like, what do you mean?
It's like my kids. It's like my kids. Like they keep asking the same thing. It's like, I already told you, no. And but
well,
but maybe what about now? What about now?
Are you going to decide? What are you going to decide today? And it's like, guys, he doesn't want to go. Like, why would he go?
The idea I heard floated this morning was, there's obviously something mentally wrong with him. So we'll get him removed. Maybe we can use the 25th Amendment and get him.
If you want to, go ahead. But why? So look at the people who would have to vote on that. It's his cabinet, right?
Mm-hmm.
His cabinet has the most to gain by him staying in power.
Right.
Because that gives them practical, unlimited autonomy over their own little...
As long as they're in office.
Post. Yeah. So if they remove him and we get, I don't know, Kamala Harris in there, who would that 25th, if it was triggered today, it would be Harris as president. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure she would have some ideas about how those positions should be run and what needs to happen so that she can win re-election at that point. And nobody in the cabinet wants that. Wouldn't it be nice not to have a boss? Like, I would love not having a boss.
One of the commentators I was listening to earlier made a really good point. They're like, I don't hear any Democrats begging for Kamala Harris to take charge. It's like we need to get rid of Joe, and then we need to find somebody else, not Kamala, but somebody else to step up. And it's like, wait a minute. So like you're the Democratic Party of women power and minorities and all this stuff, but you're going to set aside a black woman for some white dude or something to come in. Like, I mean, how are you going to retain?
Not just that, but the person who was elected, again, assuming the 2020 election results are legit, who was elected by the
declared people, legit. So I mean,
by 81 million people to be vice president. Like, how can you claim to be the party of democracy? We're going to protect democracy by removing the democratically elected vice president.
Well, and it's so bizarre on so many levels. Like, so level one is
by the way, Salon came out with an article today saying that we got to roll the dice with Harris. We just got to. so there are some Democrats out there saying it's just not that many.
Yeah. Well, so what you just said, I think, is so great. It's like, how can you say you're trying to defend? So first of all, I do. I mean, from my perspective, and we've had this conversation before, I do think Trump is a threat to democracy. I mean, he's, from his own mouth, it's like the Jews said about Jesus: "You blaspheme from your own mouth." We don't need.
What more evidence do we need?
You said it right. You're the one that said all this stuff. Like, I mean, we don't have to go back and recount all this stuff. I mean, he said what he wants to do. None of it sounds very democratic to me. But whatever. I mean, that is what it is, and at least he's out there owning what he said. Like, this is what I said. This is what I stand by, and his fans like it. Okay, well, so there you go. That's an option. So I'll just go on the record with that. And I don't see how you can have the Democratic Party as an opposition point to that. How can you say you're trying to defend democracy when you're actually trying to undermine the actual democratic process of nominating your candidate?
But that's the thing. I think you have to recognize the Democrat Party right now, whatever their history, and they have many things to be proud of. They are not the party of defending democracy. They're
No,
the
but they're
party.
they're claiming they are.
No, no.
That's yeah.
But what they are doing, what they're claiming, and I think this is true, is they're trying to defend our democracy. There's a difference between democracy, right? Those are democratic values, and
Right.
our democracy, which is the current status quo that benefits the
Them
various elites and so on.
or whoever it benefits. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like what's like what
That's
Brian,
our democracy. Like
our
these
brother,
people, they try to destroy our democracy,
our,
and they're
our
not
brother,
talking about you.
our
They're talking
brother
about
Brian.
them.
He always says, you know, he's the religious one of the three of us, I would say. But
Who?
he
Which
said
one?
Brian.
Brian. Oh yeah.
But you know how people will say, well, you know, my God would never, you know, ask me to do
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and he's like, yeah, your God might not, but I mean, whether
The
that's
real one.
the real God or not, I mean, it remains to be seen. Yeah,
Yeah,
our
our
democracy. That's
democracy.
interesting. Yeah, not democracy as in the people get to choose what they want. Oh God, we can't have that.
No.
What does that guy say in Gladiator? I may not be a man of the people, but I try to be a man for the people. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, like these plebes. I mean, we can't let them be in charge, but I'm going to make some good decisions for them, you know, because
Yeah. They're gonna get their bread in circuses. It's fine.
yeah. And within the other aspect of it that I think is just uh, crazy is the some of the people defending Joe Biden. Like, you know, I was listening to Morning Joe a couple days ago, and you know, Mika
Oh, he's the
Brzezinski is like,
biggest defender.
well,
It's like,
Joe's
let me
Joe's
like
kind of Joe's kind of on. I mean, he's a little bit more even. Mika is like in the tank for Joe, right? And I mean, like she is like, this is outrageous, and you guys need to. And it was almost like they were kind of doing this. I wanted to, you know, you kept saying, well, no, we're not saying that. What we're saying is this. And she's like, well, you can say whatever you want. What I'm saying
this
is
is what I'm saying.
and but anyway, she said, well, you know, like I mean, there was a primary process. If anybody wanted to get in, they could have got in. They didn't do that, and so now you know now they want to undo all this. And I'm like, wait a minute, like that was not an open primary process. Like they didn't allow anybody to run against him. They basically like I mean everybody who's tried to like even say like, oh, I want to you know Kennedy or whatever is basically had to like opt out, run independent. I'm like that's not a you can't say the people have spoken and now Joe Biden is our nominee. People want him. Like people don't. I mean,
So
people never had a choice. The people overwhelmingly on both sides are. I mean, the polling is not ambiguous. They are completely dissatisfied with both of these clowns. You know.
well, I have to admit, I got this one totally wrong. I had posted on Facebook. Somebody's like, "Why are we running Biden again?" On I said, "Well, there's a primary. People voted for him. What are you going to say?" And there were a few states held primaries, but many of the state Democratic, because the primary isn't part of the federal vote. It's run
Right. It's
on
party.
on behalf of the party by the state government. And the state government, the ones that were democratically controlled, many of them declined to hold a primary vote. So I don't know what the percentage is, but many people in the country, maybe an outright majority of them who are Democrat, never got a chance to vote for him or against him. He was just sort of he's running for re-election. He's being installed as the nominee. Now the primaries that did happen, he won handily. So
Well,
maybe
because
he would have
there was
won
no
it.
opposition though. It's not, and I think it's also. I mean, just historically, you know, I'll not walk back my comments, but add a little texture to them. I mean, I just found it outrageous in this particular cycle to be saying these words, and in the context of history, most incumbent presidents running for reelection don't get a primary challenge, and most of the primaries are perfunctory. When Trump was running for reelection in 2020, I mean, they actually suspended primaries in most of the states. The Republican parties did. So, and I thought that was I was like, wow, this is crazy. They're actually going to say, and he doesn't even get a chance to be challenged, but nobody stood
I,
up
I,
against him
I
anyway.
think
So
I think what they're hoping for in this case, and this is again sort of party and inner party stuff, is they want to avoid what happened in '92 to George H.W. Bush, who had a primary challenge from Pat Buchanan,
mhm.
who really went after him on a lot of fiscal conservative stuff. If you recall, when he was nominated, Bush Sr. said, read my lips,
No new
no new
taxes.
taxes, and then signed a tax increase into law. And he said, well, as part of some horse trading, it wasn't that bad, but it really tarnished his image with the more sort of fiscal, disciplined, libertarian
Milton Friedman
types.
crowd, right?
Friedman crowd. Yeah. The trickle down people, of which Pat Buchanan is one of those, or was. And so that really damaged H.W. Bush. And so by the time he gets to the Clinton matchup, he's this sort of
Banged
bruised.
up, right?
Yeah. And so I think the parties are like, we don't want we don't want
I
that
feel
to
like
happen
I feel
again,
like didn't that happen with Carter in '80 as well when he was running against Reagan? Didn't Ted Kennedy run against Carter in 1980?
I wasn't watching politics then.
Yeah,
Well, no, I don't know.
yeah.
Um, if you say so, yeah, I don't know. But that would be
Yeah.
that would be a
Whatever
case.
campaign that Kennedy was forced to step aside because of Chappaquiddick. I want to say that was '80, maybe been '76, but I felt like Carter.
Maybe it was
Carter.
80, yeah, but it's like those primary challenges to the incumbent president can be pretty nasty. It's not the same for congressional ones because so many of them are gerrymandered into safe blue or safe red districts. So the primary really is the election for all, intents and purposes. Um, but for the
Yeah,
president,
I'm right.
it
Ted
is
Kennedy,
80, yeah.
1980. Yep.
So so both parties have had this pretty negative experience of letting the primary happen. They're like, okay, maybe they're like, never
But
again.
dude, to me, so and again, I'm speaking as a voter, not some party official. That's great, and I mean, I bang these guys up. I mean, there's
Sure, if
something
they can't
about
if they can handle it.
dude. I mean, it's like it's like Alec Baldwin says in that Glenn Road. You can't take this. How are you going to take the abuse you get? In the general. So I just yeah, it's I mean, at least all these people ostensibly agree with your position. If they want to be nitpicky about a couple things, it's like, well, I mean,
Hmm.
I just to me good. And
Or
there's something about the
or
smoke
they're
of
part of
battle
your coalition. They represent part of your coalition that you need to
that
win
you need
over.
to win over. Correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I don't know. That's what they wound up with. I mean, at least the Republican one this time around was an open primary. And I think the issue there, and I know the polls say, well, most people would rather someone other than Trump. The problem is that they're so split on what the other than Trump would be that Trump winds up being their second choice. So
Right.
it's like as soon as that guy gets out, I really liked him. I don't like any of these other ones, so I'll take Trump. And then, but that's how it was with all of them. So
In
as like a
2016 too.
yeah, so a second choice for everybody, he came out okay. Um, I don't, I think the Democrats are going to wind up with the same situation if they decide not to run Biden or Harris, which I think would be really weird. But if they did, I mean, you might say, well, yeah, 80% of voters want someone other than Biden, but they don't want the same person. They
Mhm.
want a whole bunch of different people. And so it's like, how do you know that the person that you're able to get is going to be one that everyone can coalesce around? Or maybe
Yeah.
they're just sort of like, maybe it leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. We're like, well, you had a chance to nominate this dude and he was the best and you threw that away and I'm done with all that. Like it's just going to make people mad. I don't know.
Well, to your point, I mean, it can only be good because maybe the Democratic Party will just fall to pieces after this, with the self-incriminations and whatever else.
No,
And
dude, remember, I'm voting for the maximum chaos.
well, but that is chaos.
Well, well, yeah, but then we get Trump in office and we probably buy
Ah,
another few years before the thing goes down. And like I need like the maximum amount of dysfunctional government up there. So like Harris
you
would
know,
be great, to be honest, but I'll take Biden in a pinch.
you know, uh, there's this fear out there on the left that if Trump gets reelected, that he won't be leaving office. Like that's it. He'll just call off the next election and
He'll install his son as a successor. The leader's son, the leader.
Yeah, right, the dear leader. Yeah. But and it's funny, to your point there of, I mean, when Rome transitioned from a republic into a dictatorship, I mean, it lasted another, what, 400 years?
Almost 500.
But yeah, so I mean, it's that
Well,
that was not the death of the Roman Empire.
of Rome.
In fact,
No.
yeah,
It lasted 500 years in the West. In the
right,
East,
and then 1,000 in the East. Yeah.
another 1,000.
Mhm.
So once it became a dictatorship in the East, it lasted for another 1,500 years.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, during that time, it had the most stable economy in the world, the Byzantine Empire. So,
Because they were so religious.
no,
That Orthodox faith, man, it's just it's rock solid.
No.
It's lack of emphasis on the individual, I think, is what makes it so great.
no.
It's emphasis on collectivism.
What helped with the bank stuff is that they had a pure gold standard, and it cost money to store your gold at the bank. So,
Reverse interest.
reverse interest, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, if you want to hold on to your money, we'll hold it for you.
Well, that's because the bank wasn't making money lending money out. They didn't have fractional reserve lending, so I mean, it was literally a storage unit, right?
Because if they're going to lend it, they have to actually give you the metal.
Right. So, like, to me, that model makes a ton of sense. I mean, because you're not the product anymore. You're paying them for storage and protection and all this other kind of stuff. So yeah, it makes sense. You should pay the bank.
And which makes it a better deal to take your money and invest it or do capital improvements on your property or something like that. So it was. It wasn't
an army, go conquer some more people.
Well, you can't, right? Because you can't borrow that much money from the bank because the bank has to give you the metal. So it was not an expansionist style economy. It wasn't an economy that grew. It was an economy that was very stable. It was very clean. So it's a different system. What can you do?
I think the American economy, what is our GDP? 20 trillion? That's in that neighborhood.
Oh, gosh. Let me look it up.
I think that's right, 20 trillion. So somebody was making this point the other day. They're like, well, when you factor in for COVID, because I think one of the things Trump says is that, we had the best economy ever under him and the worst economy ever under Biden. And it's like, well, when you factor in COVID and, everything else, basically Trump's economy grew by 2% Biden's economy grew by 3% basically 1 percentage point different. And they're like, what? It's pretty much the same thing. And I'm like, I don't know, 1% of 20 trillion is a big number.
Let's see. GDP. What's the current release on this? It's from the BEA. Give me. Oh, okay.
25.44 trillion in 2022.
Yeah. So current GDP is 28.27.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But remember, there's inflation.
3 trillion more. Yeah.
Well, but inflation's a part of that.
Right.
So it's not that we've spent 3% more dollars, but that doesn't mean that we've actually bought 3% more goods.
Whatever. Yeah. Right.
We don't know that. That's something that no one will know.
Yeah. It's interesting. Fertility rate in the United States down to 1.66 births per woman.
Yep.
They say, isn't 1.8 replacement rate or something like that?
2.5.
2.5. So, it's interesting. What are your thoughts on immigration in general? Legal immigration, not the disaster we've got going on.
Not illegal. Okay.
Just legal immigration. For or against.
Okay.
Discuss.
So I'm ready to get myself canceled here.
Good. Go for it.
Okay. So
you can't get canceled. This is our show.
That's true.
We can only
Facebook
cancel each
might
other.
kick us off. Like,
I'm never getting on here with you again. That was outrageous.
Well, we could have a podcast, but we just can't share it anywhere. We're like handing out cassette tapes like the Ayatollah did during the 70s.
Right.
Like the forbidden knowledge. So I think coming from Aristotle's point of view, which I think is largely correct, you can invite new people into your country as long as you're able to transfer your values and culture to them. So it's like in Texas, where we live, we bring someone in. You say, "Oh, you're living in Texas now? Cool. Here's your cowboy hat. Here's your boots. Listen to this playlist. You're coming to the barbecue with us." You're like, "Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
I
a
can't eat.
vegetarian.
I can't eat meat." You're like, "No, you're gonna eat meat. Like that's how we do things here. You're gonna acquire taste for apple pie. We're gonna sing these songs together about America and Texas, the yellow rose, and so on. But also certain ideals. Like you're gonna open the door for women when they walk in, even if you think chivalry is stupid. You're gonna do it anyway because you have to. Like that's what we do here. And you do this enough, and you get people after a while, somewhat you're going to see people walking around speaking like we do with Texas accent, and it's like they don't look like us. It's like doesn't matter. Like they're one of us now, and they really would be. So as long as the rate that comes in, the number of people that come in is matched with an appropriate level of, I don't know what you want to call it, acclimation, assimilation, enculturation, whatever it is. If you're able to match that, then your society gets to survive. If not,
All I can think of right now is the Borg. Assimilate or die.
assimilate, yeah, well, you don't have to assimilate.
Resistance is futile.
Well, for the Borg, you go out and conquer people. This would be people coming in of their own. We're not kidnapping people and bringing them in. I mean, that was a long time ago. We don't do that anymore. But it's like you come in, you want to come in, you have to sort of become one of us. And we'll show you how. And we'll have all the resources available for it. And as long as you can keep up, that's fine. If you want to bring in fewer than that many people, you've got to bring the birth rate up to the point where your country doesn't get hollowed out. It doesn't become an empty country.
Yeah, that's what's happening right here. So
Which is what's happening, right? So basically, usually that means that your culture has lost the will to live, and you don't have a culture anymore. You have a historical culture, something that people should read about as like a cool thing that used to happen.
somebody I used to know.
Yeah, it's like talking about the Austro-Hungarian Empire and how Vienna was a place where all this classical music came out. It's like, well, Vienna today is not.
And don't forget strudel. Strudel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like there's some elements of it that stick around, but it's fundamentally a different place. It's a historical culture. So usually your birth rate is that low. You're in a historical culture anyway. There's nothing to hold on to because you're not willing to keep it going. So like, why should you expect the people coming in to keep it going? Like, that's not going to happen. So the other thing that happens is your number of people that come in outpace the sort of assimilation and enculturation forces, whatever those are. And then your country basically descends into civil war after a little bit. Now, civil war might be cold civil war, political civil war, or it could be like a shooting war where it's just like we have to round up them, because they're
whoever they are. Yeah,
they are. Well, and a lot of times it'll be the new people who are looking at the ones who are established and like, why do they have all this property? Why do they own all this stuff? Like, we have to take it from them. It's not right that they have it.
They took it from us.
Yeah, or we're entitled to it. Like, who are they? They're weak. They're
immigrants. Yeah.
Well, the
immigrants saying it about it's like the locals.
Like, we're the ones that work in the fields and we do all this stuff. We're the strong. They're the weak. We'll take it, and eventually that's what happens. Or you wind up with like a security.
Do you think Aristotle's paradigm, which you eloquently restated, very well done, do you think it applies to an experiment like America? I mean, has that ever been our application?
So I don't know.
I can't think of a time where that was anything that America as a culture. I mean, I can't remember that being a thing. I mean,
yeah, I think this is an easy case to be made for someplace like France. So France is currently bringing in 500,000 people a year. So I mean, if you think about a country, it's not that many people who live there. So like, I think it's like the 4th or 5th largest city in France has 500,000 people. So it's like bringing in the equivalent of,
I think it's very difficult to.
French has a defined culture.
Well, and it's also there's an ethnicity. I mean, there are French people, German people, Japanese people. It's very difficult to say what is an American person. I mean, like the Native American, it's whatever. We don't have that.
So if you look at America and you think, okay, do we have a culture really? And I kind of think we don't really. We have like little pockets of culture. So like we have a barbecue culture, you know, we've got a
Well,
music culture.
yeah. Now, when I would even argue that, like, uh, I would argue we don't have. I don't think there's an American culture. I do think that there is an American energy of, and it's made up of the. If you think about the people that came here, and even the people that continue to come here, and even the way that we think of ourselves. I mean, this goes across political party. Is, an attitude of I can do it. We can do it. I will do it. Like, I'm not. I'm not like zero caste system, zero. I mean, that may not be the reality, but that's the way we think of ourselves.
The ideal.
That anybody can come in here and get to the top. Anybody can be a billionaire if they work hard enough and they're smart enough and whatever. We no, that's not true in practice. But that's, in fact,
Yeah.
it's interesting. They've done all these studies of why, on the liberal side of things, there's all these programs that are put in place to support and elevate uh, lower class and lower middle class people, to give them advantages. Almost all of those ideas come from what we would call the progressive left, and they are overwhelmingly voted against by people in those brackets. The whole idea of, like, oh, let's raise the taxes on people making more than $500,000 a year, for example, which is, I mean, like, there's nobody in this entire economy that's gotten a tax increase that makes less than $450,000. Even certainly during Obama and during Biden, I mean, like, that's been their cutoff. It's like, dude, if you make less than $450,000 a year, like, you're good.
We're
And
not
yet
coming
people,
for you.
right, we're coming for them, because there's so much money up there, and there is, like, if you look at the wealth distribution, I mean, the amount of money that's held by the top, even 1% relative to the rest of the. I mean, it's
Sure.
we should
Yeah.
look it up here in a minute.
It's pretty
That's where
remarkable.
the money is. So you're not going to raise money as a government by taxing us. You raise money by taxing them, right? That is for sure the case, and yet people vote against those, and it's always this question. I mean, you hear about it in different think tanks and conversations and stuff, like, why would these people vote against their own interests? And these people, as in, like, oh, we're not one of them. Like, dude, you're middle class too, bro. I don't know what you went to college, therefore you think you're
These
not one of
people.
them. But, like, why would they vote against it? And it's like, because they think that they can be one of those people. Like, they don't want to tax the rich, because I'm going to be rich one day.
Yeah.
And that that
I
and
mean,
that is a
those things might fail for any number of reasons. Like, you know, um, what if you got a sudden infusion of wealth? Like your rich uncle dies or you win something, and it's like, how much of that do you want the government to take away? Like if you're, say, start a company and you're sole proprietorship or self-employed, how exactly is that represented as income? Could you wind up with, so it's like anytime taxes are raised and you're like, oh no, you're below the cutoff, there's always this worry that, like, yeah, for now, but like at some point
that's my point.
they're
That's my
gonna look
point.
at my position and be like, we need to close that loophole,
Well, that
that I was in.
you're making my point for me. Is
Yeah,
that people generally, Americans, believe that their future situation will be better than their present situation, because
sure.
of what I'm going to do about it, right? It's not because somebody else
Yeah.
is going to hand it to me. It's because I'm going to go out there and do X, or whatever the case
Make
may
it
be.
happen.
Make it happen. And that's and because of that, and also the other added thing about most American, like, in general, think of themselves as very self-sufficient people, right?
Right.
I don't
Right.
need them looking out for me. I got it. In fact, why don't you worry about yourself? And that's, again, a lot of these, like, left leaning, or what we would call maybe social safety net programs get such headwinds, is because people are like, dude, I already work hard enough to provide for me and mine. So we're going to put these programs together, and people are already smart enough to know that, I mean, but that money's got to come from somewhere. I'm going to be paying taxes now to support them and myself. Like, I don't have time to do
Yeah.
that. And that's very much part of our DNA. And that goes back to, I mean, the Puritans, the Pilgrims, I mean, people
Yeah. Like
fleeing.
the work Protestant work ethic. I think it also might have to do with, like, sometimes what's being offered is, you know, not what people. It's like the
Right.
ones
Or,
that
hey, I can do it better than that. Like forget it.
yeah,
Yeah.
or like, hey, here we're gonna give your kids free college. And you're like, oh wow, great. So they'll be more useless than they are now. That's perfect. It'd be like saying, hey, we noticed that you guys are listening to a bunch of rap music, and instead of or like heavy metal, and instead of funding that, we're gonna send all of your kids to the classical music festival. And it's like,
Nobody wants to go to the classic
no
music
one wants to
festival,
go there.
bro.
And anybody that did, we would laugh at anyway. So like, why are you offering this?
Well, this is one other thing about I think the American ethos is that I have the right to screw myself up. Like I can do that.
Yeah,
You can't tell me what to do. I can go out here and do that myself. That's not good for you. No, screw you. I want to eat it anyway.
I want to do it
You know,
anyway. Yeah,
I want to do it anyway. And
freedom,
yeah, freedom,
freedom
baby.
prize.
And I think that is that's what's attractive to people. The reason people come here is because they feel like not because we're the best ever or whatever, but because at least over there I have a shot.
Hmm.
And that's what it is. It's a chance, it's an opportunity, it's a whatever, land of opportunity. But it's not like they're just handing it out. I mean, it's a struggle, it's ugly, it's brutal. Sometimes you got to get in the street and get your hands dirty and get punched in the face or whatever the case may be. But the strong survive, and we're part of the strong. And I think that's it. I mean, at least that's the way we view ourselves, right?
Yeah.
As Americans. And I think that's
Well,
but
and
you don't have to assimilate into that. Like that's what attracts you when you show up here. Like you already consider yourself one of those, or you would never come here in the beginning.
well, well, maybe, right? So like, let's say, and I think this is what people are worried about. I'm not worried about this, but I think this is what some people are worried about is that, okay, someone comes over and they're like, oh, land of opportunity, great. That's what attracted me. And you start working and it's hard. And maybe it's harder than you thought. And you're living in an apartment with five other people. And you're like, gosh, this is really not so great. And so some people, politicians come by that say the same kind of thing that politicians in your previous country said, like, oh, we're going to give you rent assistance. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. You have a little kid. Well, you shouldn't be working this many hours. Well, we'll pay you to stay home and take care of your kids for a little bit and stuff. And they're like, wow, that's kind of nice. That's what we had back home, and I kind of miss that. We had onions back there in Egypt,
Yeah, that's right.
right.
Yeah.
And so,
At
so
least in
like,
Egypt,
okay,
we never went hungry. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, okay, well, we'll vote for that. That's good. Yeah, you guys are got our back. And in the process, you wind up, getting um, a system that looks more and more like the country you left rather than the new one you came to. And so you basically like kill the goose that laid the golden egg.
Well,
But
hopefully
nobody,
without the corruption and the
oh, but that's going to happen, right? Whenever you have that much money going around and you have politicians that are in charge of picking the winners and losers, then the corruption it just will occur. Like there's, like, find me someone that won't, take that bait. Um, so
Dude,
it's
there's a
just
lot of
like,
money laying around here.
yeah, Rod Blagojevich, probably one of our last great American philosophers.
Right. Black
When he was talking about the Senate seat, he was like, that's valuable. You don't give that away for free,
Right.
you know.
I
Um,
love that.
but I think that's kind of true with politicians in general. So um, the more power and the more ability to hand out the cookies, the goodies, the more corruption will follow. And it's like I don't know, it's like Murphy's Law kind of thing. I don't know. There's probably a named law behind this, but so
There should
I
be
think that's the worry.
Russell's Law.
Russell, no, this one
Yeah.
someone already came up with this, I'm sure. But this is something that I think that people worry about when it comes to, because it's like, well, okay, if you're going to come here, we need to like do some really strong indoctrination of why it's like this. It's like it's the land of opportunity today. Why? Like here's why. Here are the principles that kept this in place, and we can't, if we mess with them, we sort of destroy the reason you came in the first place. And
We should do a better job of teaching that to the kids, our own kids. I mean, I think
yeah,
we have the worst civics education, I think, on the planet. I just
yes.
can't imagine a worse.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why I say things like, America's over and stuff. It's like, well, because no one wants to do that, right? In fact, doing so for a lot of people sounds offensive. It's like, whoa, meritocracy. I mean, isn't that another word for white supremacy? Or,
Right.
like, this is the kind of stuff that people get canceled over, and especially in educational circles. Like if you got an EDD, which is probably a requirement for being a superintendent somewhere or principal, you're going to have to toe the line on all sorts of things that basically say that the founding principles of America were not just wrong, but evil.
Mhm.
And that they were evil then, they're evil now. And it's like holding up the American flag is triggering or should be triggering. And, the only flags that we can hold up are the flags of marginalized people we've marginalized and so on.
Right.
So it's like, you know, you got a bunch of
I think
young
there's
people
a
that don't know any of this stuff,
there.
or like think. Anyway, go ahead.
Don't you think there's an inability to hold two thoughts at the same time? It's like two things can be true, right? So like let's take slavery, right? So look, the Constitution doesn't eliminate slavery. America is basically built on slavery for the first almost 100 years. That's a the founding fathers, most of them own, half of them own slaves, not most of them, pardon me, but half of them own slaves, and these were this is bad system, and yes, slavery is
It was.
bad, shouldn't have been in the system, whatever.
Yep.
And it's also a very noble experiment. This is the first time that in
The Constitution, not slavery.
the Constitution
Yeah.
that in Franklin and some of the other founding fathers, actually refer to it as the great experiment of. It's interesting, Bridgerton. I don't know if you ever watched this show on Netflix, but
I do.
okay, so it's a little rewrite of history a little bit,
It's terrible, but it's very
yeah.
fun.
But it's interesting in the prequel, Bridgerton prequel, the Queen Charlotte or whatever, the queen is black,
Hmm.
and they call it, they're kind of rewriting history a little bit. England did outlaw slavery much earlier than we did, but not at the time that this is set in. And they're talking about the the experiment that they're trying to do of elevating, black people into society, into that arena. And it's kind of interesting to watch the very mild racism that goes on in the show. It's kind of like, oh, we can't allow them to be at this party or whatever. And but it was interesting because like it, as flawed as some of these people are, that even the people putting together the great experiment, right, are themselves racist. Like you can tell, like as they're talking about it, it's like, oh my god, I can't believe they just said that. And but they're trying, right? It's like look, you're here and you want to go. You want to open up your society. You want to make it more progressive. You want to give more people a chance. You want to advance whatever goals that you have. You have to start where you are. And so it's like, well, look, these people started here. This is what they did. And then in this Constitution, the document, they provide amendments. They provide all these different things. And so as we've progressed, as we've learned things, as we've gained political will, we've altered those things, not flawlessly by any means. In fact, sometimes take a step back and you're like, what was that? That was crazy. Let's undo that, And so prohibition, for example. So it's like, there are all these things that it's like, but if I acknowledge that we've made progress, then that in itself is, not acceptable thing to say because we're not perfect yet. And it's like, no, you can't say that because we still have so much work to do. It's like, yes, we have so much work to do, but there's nothing wrong with taking a minute, cracking a beer and saying, hey, good job so far. Let's keep going. Right. Rather than just, this is all awful and everybody, I don't understand that. I don't know. I can't, I have a hard time getting my arms around that.
I
It's like,
think
yes, it was a flawed system. And yes, it was also awesome at its time. And so I don't know.
I think it's I think gradualism is actually really hard to accept and requires a lot of maturity. So let me give you a funny example. So current Pope Francis, is pretty well known for being a gradualist. And so one of the things that he was criticized for, I think when he was still a cardinal in Italy, was he would like be very welcoming of people that were living together outside marriage, which according to Catholicism is a big no-no. Like you don't do
Mhm.
that. but it was kind of like, okay, they're living with this girl. It's like, well, you should make sure that you like treat her really well. Like you shouldn't want that. Like, okay. It's like, oh, a kid
Or
comes
shouldn't
along.
you
It's
be
like,
telling him to move out? Yeah,
no,
right,
no, no, yeah.
right.
It's like a kid comes along. You're like, well, you definitely should keep the kid,
Let's get
right?
him
Whatever.
baptized.
But
Yeah,
yeah, why don't we get him baptized? It's like,
right.
and then, well, the kid's Catholic now, so you guys you should show up every week. And after a while, it's like, you should probably marry the mother of your child. You're together, you're happy. Like, why not do that? Come confess, and and it's like we're just going to kind of get you there
Boil the water slowly. Yeah,
one
heat the
piece of.
frog.
But here's the thing: it's not boiling the water. It's each step of the way is a good step, right? So like isn't the final there's a final goal out there, and we're going to try to just get you to the next step in that goal. We're not going to tell you to go all the way over there. It's just like just the next step. And eventually you'll next step yourself into doing the right thing, being a good Catholic, right? So but each one of those steps is a victory.
I think that's a great example. And I
So
think you're right. People have a really hard time with that. It's like, no, I must be this way now, or else you're
needs to be
evil.
perfect. Needs to be perfect today, and it's just like
Because God can't tolerate even one sin.
probably not. But that's why we'll confess later, right? But
Let me know when he let me know when he shows up, and I'll cut it out immediately.
sure, and if
Right.
someone said and so like taking like racial equality. I mean, it is a scandal on every level, how minorities were treated in this country. I mean, just at the economic level,
Even
like
are,
even
I
if you
would say,
didn't
some
care,
cases.
even if you didn't care about the humanity, it's like the amount of talent that was simply thrown away. I mean, even if you
Yeah, it would have accrued to everybody's benefit. Exactly.
yeah, like
Yeah.
just that alone. I mean, even if you don't buy the humanities stuff that we're all equal, like just that alone is like I said, a scandal in every single way. So, should we celebrate every step that we can? You know, um, so it's like, okay, George Washington freed his slaves in his will after his wife passed away. Okay. So he thought slavery was wrong. He did not free slaves until his wife passed. Imperfect, very imperfect. Is it better than selling them off with your estate in order to pay your debts?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So let's high five George Washington on doing something that at the time was better than what most of his contemporaries did. And then now that we have his example, the next generation can do even better than that, and so on. And you occasionally will have people that make giant leaps, and that's even better, right? But like each step of the way, we should be happy for the progress. And I think at some point, and this is where I uh, break ranks with a lot of my fellow liberals. I think I think at some point you have to be able to declare victory and be done. And you mentioned Bridgerton, which I think is a really fun show. If you look at season 1 and 2, I mean, it's a very racially diverse cast, mostly black and white. There's a few Asian people in it, but it's almost entirely black and white. And it is never mentioned. It is never brought up. It's just like, that dude's really handsome. I think I'm in love with them. And it's like, up interracial couple. No one says, like, you realize your
Right.
children will be
Right.
mixed
Right.
race. Like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Absolutely nobody cares. Now, they had 2 seasons of it, and they went back and did the prequel. The prequel is all about, this great experiment integrating. And I was all worried that when the next season of Bridgerton came out, that they would be like, here we go with, oh, we're still,
Still
fighting the good
struggling.
fight. It's
Yeah.
like, nope, we went right back to it just doesn't matter. Nobody cares. It's not a thing. And it's like, here is a sort of imagined society where they could declare victory. It's over. The war is over.
Hmm.
And I think that we have to be willing to say at some point, and maybe everyone has a different picture in their mind of where that is, that the war is over. This is not something for the history books. That, yeah, well, back in the day, it used to be, people thought that way. Isn't that wild? That's crazy. You know? And I think for a lot of my friends, or my fellow liberal friends, they can't imagine. There's like, no, there will always be. That's part of what it means to be a minority, is that it will always, you are always a second class citizen, and that's who you are. It's like, no, you're you. Society might treat you in a way that is unfair, but that's not who you are. You're separate from that. So I don't know. I mean, I think, what is the end game for our marginalized groups?
I think you bring up a really good point. I don't know where you would draw the line and say past this line is victory, but I think,
like any other war, right? You very rarely get total victory, but at some point you say,
it's enough to stop fighting.
We're done. Yeah, we don't have to keep fighting. It's over.
I was very interested to see. We're going all over the map today, but
hey, this is what happens. I just came out of a hurricane, so I'm like, let the thoughts flow.
let the thoughts flow. Yeah, this I don't know if you saw that Trump asked for abortion to be taken out of the party platform completely. So there's no. It's the first time, and I don't know how many decades, or multiple decades. Since when was the? I can't. We'd have to look that up, but probably the 80s, I would imagine. Yeah. Moral majority. But like from that time, there was in the Republican Party platform that we want a federal ban on abortion, and the first time ever they've dropped that. They're like, the states can do what they want. Like we defeated Roe versus Wade, and the states can make the decision. But if there's states out there that want to be pro-choice, the federal government's got nothing to say about it, which I thought was remarkable. There's one of the figures on the religious right, Tony Perkins, a big pro-life guy. American Family Values, whatever,
I'm not familiar with him.
Name, well, it doesn't matter, but like, he's a big name, big pro-life guy, huge fundraiser on the religious right. And I guess he was, shocked and stunned that they were even thinking about leaving it out. And so they were raising all this money, trying to force them to keep this in there. And it really, there were Republican lawmakers calling him and other pro-lifers out by name, saying that these people are fringe for wanting that.
Wanting it to remain in?
Wanting a federal ban. Like, that's fringe. Like, we've already figured this out, and that's crazy talk. We don't need any crazy talk here. And I thought, man, that is, talk about, there's an old Chinese curse of, two Chinese curses. One is may you live in interesting times.
Right. Yeah. You don't want that. Boring. I want boring times.
Right. And then the other one is, which I think is so great, and I think about this all the time, may you find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
What that is a curse, not a blessing. May you find what you're looking for. And I feel like these guys, it's like the not conservatives, but the religious right, the conservative Christians, let's call it. Like, they really, like, and this is just my perspective, and so anybody's welcome to come on here and debate it later if they want to. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. But it's like, man, they made this deal with the devil to support this guy who's clearly not. I don't want to call him out and say he's not a Christian, but he certainly has said multiple times he's never repented for his sins, doesn't have anything to ask God for forgiveness for. Sure, yeah. Not the words of a follower of Christ, let's say. Clearly doesn't know anything about the Bible. But he's God's warrior because he's going to protect the unborn, and like all this stuff. And then now your issue of abortion and pro-life and a federal ban is basically gone. Nobody's fighting for that anymore. Like, Democrats certainly aren't fighting for it. Republicans aren't fighting for it. And you basically, that's it. And so declaring, saying that something's over, for example, I think there's plenty of people on the left that are like, hey, this is not over. Like, we want we need the women in every state need to be able to make decisions about, you know, their own. This is the way I view it. That they'll continue to fight for that, but it's interesting to see that on the right, anyway, at least the political class and the hoi polloi that follow, you know, this guy is basically like, we're done. Thoughts? Your thoughts?
Well, about abortion policy in general, or that?
Just not in general. I mean, we know it is what it is. I think that dynamic. What do you think about the Republican Party, like basically setting that aside?
Well, I think remember, if you consider what politics are, I've said this many times. Politics is the art of dividing the populace into two halves, and that two sides, and your side is the larger of the two. All right. Any political party that doesn't do that is
mathematically stated
loses. Yeah. Well, this is what happened in France, by the way. That's how you explain what happened in France, the latest parliamentary election. But turns out the two people is everyone against those guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll drop out of the race to make sure there's only one choice against
those people. Yeah.
So right now, a federal ban, or like a really hard ban on abortion, and I mean like a real ban, that's a minority view, a very small minority view.
But it has been for years. I mean, years.
Full ban. Well, you'll have plenty of people who will say that they're like, yes, I'm in favor, until they think about what the ramifications of such a policy would be, and it would be very impractical policy,
100%.
very difficult policy. And so I think the you're going to get sort of like a half sort of a shadow legalization, kind of like the way in Texas marijuana is legal. Marijuana is 100% legal in Texas. I was in a store the other day, coffee shop, they were selling straight up marijuana because it's made under the Farm Bill. And it's like, yeah, we legalized it. We didn't say that we legalized it, but it's legal. And you can just walk into the store and buy it. And it is like, it's actually, they're not breaking the law. That's totally legal in this state. And
it has to be packaged. It has to be packaged in a particular way, though. And yeah.
But it has to be produced in a particular way, certified. But once you jump through those hoops, walk in the store.
Did I send you that article? Like the concentrations of THC.
Oh yeah, yes.
Like
although I already knew this from living in Houston, where it is very, very openly available. Like you just walk into the store. So that's the kind of thing. So, for example, the latest Supreme Court ruling on the abortion pill, which I think it accounts for something like 75 to 80% of early abortions,
all terminated pregnancies,
are done through this pill. So, like, think first trimester kind of stuff. And it's like, well, just like any other medication, if an out-of-state doctor prescribes it, an out-of-state pharmacist fills the prescription, and they ship it to your door in this state, you're not liable for that. They're not. So it's like in Texas, actually, you have abortion on demand up to 12 weeks through medication. So even though they say, well, no, see, like heartbeat bill, 5-6 weeks, that's it. It's like, well, no, I mean, in practice, it's actually legal up to 12 weeks as long as you take the medication version, right? And so you're going to wind up with that kind of thing where, like, the Republicans, who have a lot of pro-life people in their party, are not going to want to close that door because that's would be very politically costly to them. So you just sort of leave it open. But again, we don't say we've legalized abortion up to 12 weeks. We just sort of let it ride.
So again, like how much of well, my perspective is that a lot of these laws and a lot of these campaigns are intentionally designed as wedge issues to get people outraged and give money and show up at the polls. It's like, don't worry about what that person's doing on this and this and this and this. Instead, fight to save the unborn, or blah blah blah. And it's like, at some point, I was shocked at how usually the people that you have conned into supporting you through this thing, you would at least keep that there. You wouldn't say, "Ah, suckers," you know.
No,
This is
the
very unusual.
politicians are notorious about this. My favorite example is John McCain, who in the election, the 2016 election where he ran for Senate, I think, or was it 2014 where he was reelected? I can't remember. But his campaign slogan, like his own ad said, leading the fight to repeal Obamacare.
Right,
Then
he's the guy that voted to keep it.
he voted. He's like, no, you know.
What was more
It's
like
like,
this?
wait, yeah.
Right.
So like, you're the one who said that you were leading the fight, and now here comes the time to actually vote on it, and it's no, and it's like, oh, that was all for show. That was all a lie. All this stuff about like, oh, he's such an honest man. He's, such a decent person. He's the maverick of the Senate. It's like, no,
Well, he was the maverick in that moment.
he was never in that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
but it's like, oh, you're
you
just
never
another
can't tell what that guy's gonna do.
lying politician, right? It's just it's just ad copy. There's no principle there.
Is there no
So
one with any integrity?
no,
No,
no.
no.
So
Integrity what?
I think the abortion thing. I think if for the people who are very pro-life, I don't think this is going to be solved by outlawing abortion. I think what you need to do is politically. Now, I'm not saying like what would be like if we could build Plato's Republic, and have like a society based on reason, and we just decide the laws from first principles. I'm not talking about that because maybe in that case abortion would be illegal because like it would be unthinkable in this sort of perfect ideal society.
Right, where there are no unwanted pregnancies. Yeah, that
Right.
society. Yeah,
But if we're saying like what would be politically feasible in a country that has all these different views is you need to start focusing on policies that would make abortion less appealing on the demand side.
100%.
So
What
those
and
would be like we can debate about that. But
that's been my point for so many years, man. I mean, I can't remember when well, actually I can remember when I became pro-choice, but it's decades ago. And my thinking has always been like rooted in like what actually works, right? So like if abstinence only bottom line is you're trying to reduce abortions or eliminate, let's say whatever your end goal is to eliminate abortions or whatever, at least reduce them
Sure.
to a statistically negligible number. In order to do that, you have to reduce unwanted pregnancies because there's a cause of abortion that is unwanted pregnancy. Somebody's not pregnant, doesn't want to be, therefore they need an abortion. That's it. So how do we reduce the unwanted pregnancy? The unwanted pregnancies can be reduced by sex education, by distributing, prophylactics, by making birth control widely available, by whatever. I mean, like just any number of things. By teaching abstinence and sexual restraint. I mean, there's a whole mix of things that have been shown to work together to reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies. And yet,
maybe you kind of adopt a all of the above strategy. Maybe you do stuff post conception as well, right? What if you say, well, look, because we put together all these programs for pre-K and kindergarten and maternal leave and all this other stuff, and we say, gosh, this kind of sucks for the people who are more family values. That like, there's going to be a lot of resources that get pumped towards single moms. Maybe we're not. We were like, but you say, well, but then you could say, well, there's no reason for you to get an abortion. Like
right,
the baby's healthy, you're healthy. Like
increase the access to adoption, reduce social stigma around being pregnant, but all of these things
do all sorts of things.
So all that stuff, like if you take off and just look at like, okay, how do I reduce unwanted pregnancy or the desire to end an unwanted pregnancy, right? You would throw all those things in the bucket.
Sure.
But the same people, and again, it's usually like in this case, I'm picking on the religious right. However, we could pick on a different group for the different issue. But in this particular case, the same people that that are saying we have to get rid of abortion and save the babies and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, those are the same people that are fighting against the sex education, the distribution,
Sure.
and birth control, and certainly we don't want to reduce the stigma of unwed mothers, because that's a deterrent for the mothers to not get pregnant. And we can't be supporting single moms, because we all know that a family unit is better with a mom and a dad. And it's like, dude, yeah, in a perfect world, sure. But
Well, and
that's not the world that's not the world I
yeah,
woke up in, you know?
I think that group will come around to these ideas. I think we have a good paradigm of this already. So if you look at the Democrat Party back in the 90s, they were trying to solve the drug issue. So how do they solve the drug issue? Mandatory
Get
minimums
tough on
for
crime.
possession.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, it's like if you show up with like a quarter of an ounce or 1 ounce of various drugs,
Lock them up.
mandatory minimum sentence, federal penitentiary, and it's like we're going to make it so painful and the punishment so severe that that's going to stop drugs and like the crime and gang related crime that go along with them. And then it's like you do that for a few years, and like, wow, it's like putting people in jail doesn't seem to do anything. It's like instead they come out even more criminal minded than they went in, and
Right.
this
Very
is
good
just
for
making
the
the problem worse.
for-profit prison industry, though.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
now if you look at the current Democrat Party, they've noticed this. And so they're now against private prisons. They're in favor of drug, what do they call it? Diversion program. So it's like, okay, you've been found guilty of this. Instead of sending you to prison, we're going to send you to rehab. And then if you stay clean for the next year, we'll take this off your record, right? Because we don't want to send you to prison. We want you to like live a good life, and you've sadly gotten mixed up in some kind of criminal thing that we need to help you with, right? And so this is new for the Democrat Party. This is kind of just started to pick up some steam, and some of the old people are still kicking around. So if you look at people like Harris, for example, who's like bragged about how many marijuana users she sent to jail and
Oh, I
stuff,
know. It's ridiculous.
but it's like you seeing this in some areas, and we'll see if this works, right? If they can kind of change the way drugs are treated from a punitive model to some kind of treatment model, maybe it'll work, right? But I think it's possible for factions within a party to kind of see the light.
Mm.
And I think this is what's going to happen with the social conservatives. Because right now, I mean, I got an email. I'm on all these lists. Wonderful. From a guy from, what's his name? Torba. I'm trying to think of his first name. But think of people further to the right than the moral majority was.
Okay.
Right? Like
Pretty far right.
all the way to the right.
Yeah. Handmaid's Tale. Yeah.
Uh, just to the left of the Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not doing that stuff. But he sent this email basically denouncing the Republican Party for giving up on this issue, and it's like they're more afraid of offending liberals than they are of offending God, and all this.
Right.
Exactly the kind of stuff that you see, and it's like they have to figure out how to win elections. Like that's what their job is as the party, and so that means they have to be as appealing to the people. And if the people are more liberal on this issue, then it's like, yeah, you're going to have to be more appealing to liberals because that's who the voters are. And otherwise you just sort of lose honorably. And then what's the point of having a party that loses honorably?
Yeah, I think I'm from my personal perspective, I mean, I'm a huge fan of obviously them letting go of that, and I'm a huge fan of the movement you just described. And I think in that way, I mean, you could, I don't know how we'll look back at it, but I mean, decades from now, it is ironic to think that of all people, Donald Trump would be the one to make the Republicans more liberal on abortion, gay rights. I mean, it's crazy when you think about all the things that he has moved them left on, and they just are along for the ride. It's he's our guy.
Well, I mean, the stuff with the gay rights though is you've got like your sort of normal family values, and you have gay rights over here, and then you've got like way over here like the trans and furry people, And I think,
Oh, you can't talk negative about furries, man. I mean,
but
yeah.
the thing is though, is that like your normal conservative family values are like, okay, my daughter comes home with their girlfriend. They seem like they're nice people. They're talking about moving in together. And it's like, that's not so bad considering what could have happened way out, way
But
out
that
here. It's like,
but that right there
we'll
is
let that one, it's okay.
that right there is earth shattering in the context of 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We're not talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
when
No,
did
it's recent.
I mean, that's recent, man. I mean, like Obama got elected in '08, and I think as recently as 2012 yeah, during the 2012 campaign, they asked him if he was for legalizing gay marriage, and he said no.
Yeah.
You know,
He said marriage between man and woman. That's what
that
he
was
said.
12 years ago. So like the idea that it has moved that far, that I mean, first of all, it's a triumph for the gay community, but it's and for friends of the gay community, I mean, I'm ecstatic about it. But at the same time, it's like the fact that that's now acceptable, and Trump's waving a rainbow flag at a political rally is like, man, I would, if you told me a Republican presidential candidate would be waving a rainbow flag at a political campaign, I'm like, never, not in
First,
my lifetime.
the first nominee of a major party to do so. It's Donald Trump.
Right.
Yeah.
No Democrats ever done that either. Yeah. The first one would be a Republican. No, nah.
Who knows? Yeah, who would have thought? And it's one of those where it's like, so here's my strategic advice for people on the pro-life side, of which I consider myself one. I consider myself pro-life. We should stop talking about the making abortion illegal. I mean, other than like the partial birth, third trimester stuff that has like 80 or 90%, people are completely icked out by that
Dude,
stuff.
I'm pro-life on that. I mean,
Yeah,
like
right.
that
So it's like,
is,
okay,
yeah,
we can take that the last
off the
2
table.
months
Yeah.
off the table. But other than that, like thinking about like bans on abortion for earlier, um, I think maybe in our lifetime, smoking will become illegal. This is just wait for me. And here's why though. It's not going to be because people wised up about nicotine. It's because the replacement for smoking is better than smoking. And I'm thinking of the small e-cigarettes, things like the Juul
Or the nicotine pouches or whatever.
or the nicotine pouch. But like the Juul, you get the same sensation as smoking, not the heat, but like
Right.
you're doing something with your hands. You get interesting flavors. It's discreet. You can take 3 puffs and put it away. You don't have to finish the whole thing. It's cheaper. There's no smell that clings to your clothes. Like, it doesn't have all of these cancer effects for your mouth. And so it's like, if you handed someone who's never smoked before, like you're going to start smoking, you say you could do this cigarette pack, or you could do something like these small e-cigarettes.
Oh, everybody would do the vape. Yeah, nobody would
do the vape. It's better in every way. There's nothing about, other than tradition, or like, well, this is tobacco made America, which it did, by the way.
Right.
There's no tobacco, there's no Virginia colony.
That's right.
But it's like, other than that, the vape,
and you can argue very, very little slavery too.
Yeah, true. But it's like the vape is so much better that at some point, if they're like, hey, no one really
do we even
smokes
need this
cigarettes
product?
anymore.
Right.
We don't need it anymore. Vape is still legal. All this stuff is legal. We can shut off the cigarette supply. And
do you think they would make it illegal though? I mean, I could see it disappearing off the shelves, but I don't know.
Yeah,
why would they
but that's
pass
what
a
I'm
law?
saying. That's what I'm saying is you might have some communities that are like, okay, it's not really sold much anymore. We think it's harmful. For the last few people that are still doing it, you have a legal alternative. We'll even help. We'll even buy your first set to get you transferred off. Let's go ahead and just ban this in our state.
Yeah,
and,
I could see it. I could see it being. I could see it being banned as a public health hazard. But
right.
Yeah.
But it's like, because the alternative is so much better.
Right.
And so what I would think is what we need to start doing, and this is kind of plays to the imagination here. Could we make something so much better than abortion that it's like, why would you even bother? Like, why would you want that? And then maybe later on, you're like, why is this still on the books as something that's possible to do? And there's like 150 of them that are still performed every year. And you're like, let's get you transitioned out of we should stop doing this. It's not right, because the alternatives are so much better that it sort of disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, at that point, make it illegal.
And you're just talking about like some kind of advance in technology or delivery where you could maybe extract the fetus and
all sorts of things. It could
Yeah,
be technological. It could be like a much better birth control system for men. Right now, all of the birth control products that are available are all for women, other than prophylactics or like getting snipped. Which nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a surgery. Like
It's barbaric.
Well, surgery, and it's also not always reversible.
Right.
So, but better adoption services. There's like, again, we could do all of the above, but if it was somehow made,
They had a pill that you could take as a man that would just kill your boys in the you're firing blanks now. You take this pill, that would be a big seller.
yeah. Well, and that one is currently being worked on. There's several of them that are in phase 3 trials. So, like, I think this will happen soon, but like as just one of many things. So then it's like, well, abortion kind of disappears because
it's just barbaric custom. There are other ways to end because at the end of the day, that's what people are trying to.
Right? Like maybe like adoption is so much better than before. And we have so many wonderful services where it's like, you're not going to be bankrupted for medical expenses for giving birth. Like, we got it covered.
Yeah, but that's not the argument against. I think, and I think we're making progress on this front too. Just before I say this, but like, there's the social stigma around, especially young teen unwed mothers. And I mean, even in the most enlightened environs, it's still a little scandalous. Yeah. So it's like, I think that's the big thing, is people trying to protect their reputation, but nobody can find out about this, whatever the case may be. That's in a large part, and again, like, those people, they're not going to wait until the 7th or 8th month to end their pregnancy. They're going to do it, while nobody knows about it. Yeah.
And so, like I said, I think the best way forward is to make abortion unnecessary. And then maybe after that point, you figure out if you want to make it illegal too, or if it's just like, there's no reason, no one does it, just move on.
Yeah. But you sound awfully like Hillary Clinton, safe, legal, and rare, it's
say what?
That's her thing is, hey, we need to make abortion safe, legal, and rare.
That was Bill.
Bill. Sorry,
Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Well, so
the thing is that and this so tactically, yes, I agree. Right.
Yeah, that's all I mean.
But
I'm not talking about what's ideal or right or wrong. Just what could be done.
But also, that's not why the religious elements that are in this conversation, that's not a conversation that I've found many of them that are open to have.
Correct.
They're not interested in tactically reducing the number of abortions or some program that'll slowly get us where we need to go. They want a law passed that will, bring America back to integrity with God, and we need to end the murder of these children.
Yes.
And that is not going to, the people that believe that way are not going to somehow stop believing that way because we're getting where we need to get to. Does that make sense?
And
they want to plant a flag on the moon is what they want to do, and that's what the campaign is about.
Well, think about it like this: maybe in 200 years, we look at abortion the same way that today we look at the slavery issue. It's like, we can't imagine how people in the past did this.
Right.
Like, it's just awful. It's like cannibalism. You're like, oh, and so me talking this way is the equivalent of Washington freeing his slaves.
Yeah.
After his wife dies, in his will. And it's like, this is just what's possible today. And it's going to look in the future if we actually get there. And remember, I'm pro-life. So I would love a future like that, where people just look at it with horror that we would kill
one of the
children.
things that's coming to mind, like as you're talking about this too, is I think changing the perspective is so interesting. Like that I'd mentioned earlier, that show, The Handmaid's Tale. For those of you that don't watch that or don't know what it is, it's a futuristic society where this religious sect basically takes over the country. But it's predicated on what drives the revolution that brings this group into power is that women lose the ability to conceive. And so that's the underlying,
That's what triggers this.
that's the straw
scenario.
that breaks the camel's back, right? So there's that women become unable to conceive, and so the few women that are able to conceive become this kind of like what do you want to call it? Commodity, right?
Natural resource that needs to be controlled.
That needs to be controlled and protected and whatever. So if somehow women lost the ability to conceive, all of a sudden they'd be like, "What do you mean an abortion? Like, no, this is
that's insane."
But all of a sudden, the pregnant woman becomes this like great thing that we need to protect, rather than this like annoying thing that we need to like hide. And I think that's a societal change that
Remember, one of the things that's we talked about earlier, and I know we probably need to wrap up here, but the U.S. has a really low birth rate. We've dropped really low, and so as a society, we're not sitting around here saying like, "Man, the best thing in life is to have lots of kids." Like, what do you want? What do you want your kids? What do you want to leave your kids? Like, I want to leave them a bunch of siblings. Right? That's the biggest gift I can give them. Right? Like, I could give you money. You're just going to spend that. But if I give you a brother, I mean, isn't that a greater gift than anything? Like, no one's thinking like that right now, right? Because they're like, well, I want to have one or two, and I want to put all my resources into them so that they can succeed, and that's it. I got to get back to work. I can't have more kids.
Right.
But like, imagine a very different society, where children are like really valuable, really important, and it's like you wouldn't imagine someone throwing away a child. You're like, there'll be plenty of people who want, will help you, will give you whatever you need for you to be okay while you carry this child. But that's not our culture right now. And I think until it is politically trying to outlaw this for the country, it's not going to work.
It ain't a winner, man.
No.
Well, dude, as usual, we have not run short of things to talk about in our 1 hour podcast that's turned into a 1 hour and 45-minute podcast.
Again.
So yeah, thanks to everybody for tuning in. And Russ, thanks again, man. This is such a great conversation every week. So next week, same time, same place.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Peace.